Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of That Early Childhood Nerd. I'm Heather Burnt Santee, and Mike's here too. Hi, Mike.
Hello.
With me, as always, is Mike for the
Not
Wayne's World
lately as
fans out
much,
there.
but
No.
yeah.
So Mike Huber is here, as is Kisa Marx. Hi, Kisa.
Hello, how are
Hi.
you?
So I think most listeners know Mike, so we're going to skip him and just go
Yeah.
right to letting you talk about yourself. What do you want people to know about yourself?
Well, I am the founder of a play and nature-based child care community in Oak Park, Illinois. That's right outside of Chicago, really just basically across the street from Chicago. Um, I am a newly reformed child-led practitioner. I used to be academic centered and adult centered. And so around the pandemic, I switched everything and it led to like this personal transformation. Yeah, and I'm on my bag. That's what I do. Like,
Cool.
really passionate about it and just getting on everybody's nerves.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
welcome. That's what we do here.
Yeah.
I love adult censored. That's such I'm a word nerd. So changing that little bit of language adds a little bit of power to what you're saying. I asked Kisa actually to provide the quote for today because I just heard her talking about some things on Facebook and was like, oh, she would be a great guest instead of having like an idea for the topic beforehand. So I asked you. And here's what you shared. And this is Goldie Muhammad from Unearthing Joy. And she says, we need humanizing pedagogies that center the genius, justice, love, and humanity in our children. I love that. I love anything that calls into focus the idea that some things we do are less than humanizing. I think people, when I talk about the things we do that have dehumanizing tendencies, people get really offended and defensive. And I'm not saying anyone wakes up in the morning saying, I can't wait to go dehumanize some children today. But there are, I mean, that's the reality. Yeah.
But
So
then they
I
have
want
to change 20 diapers and suddenly
Yeah.
they might as well be changing dolls.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like, yeah.
I used to be really like that. That's a story I tell about myself. I promise I'm going to let you talk here in a minute, Kisa. But a story that I tell about myself a lot is part of my transformation is when I was working with 2-year-olds, one of my first jobs, and it was a church childcare in Nebraska. And we had 24 2-year-olds and 4 adults in one giant church room. And I was really proud of my assembly line diapering. And then I sort of accidentally discovered Magda Gerber. I was like, oh, wait a minute. This could be different.
Yes. I'm glad you brought that up. I actually have a story like that. When I first started to listen to children, it was during the assembly line. Like I had them moving and getting them out. And I was talking to one of my kids and they looked up at me and they said, when you take the diaper off that way, it hurts my skin. I was like, oh shit. I did, because I was just so quick to pull it off, put it on, and didn't even think about it because I was busy doing the job and listening. And that completely changed. Like I ask so many questions at the diaper changing station now to make sure that I'm attuned to what the child needs and not getting it done.
Yeah. Because we've got to get through that unimportant diaper stuff to get to the important teacher stuff, right?
Right.
Exactly.
Right. When you have that adult lens, then you're.
Yep.
Yeah. So we jumped right into dehumanizing, but I did want to ask you like why you chose this quote. Why is this the one you sent when I asked that question yesterday?
I chose it because it stays on my heart all the time, and it leads what I'm speaking about when I speak on online, when I speak to my grown-up clients, when I speak at workshops, everything. This can be so simple, our adult or educator transformations, but it's as difficult as realizing that what we're doing is dehumanizing. So if we think about it, it might make us uncomfortable, it might sting, it might make us angry to hear someone say that, but all of these basic principles like conscious discipline and respectful parenting, this is just basic humanization of children.
Thank you.
So we have to just remember that, like, that's a human being, not a toy, not your robot, not your sponge, none of those things. That's a human being. So it stuck with me when I read it.
Love it. And that's such a good way. Mike and I were talking before we were recording about some stuff that's happening in my job that's making me a little nervous about pushing academics down too early and with young children. And one of the things that comes up a lot in our nerd conversations in general is the idea of commodifying things, like the way we can't just be people with other people in early childhood. We can't just be, okay, so I'm the taller person and these are the shorter people.
You're the shorter person.
We have to have names and systems and labels and capital letters on everything instead of just the idea of being human together. And it's part of that feeling of, well, I'm the adult, I should be in control, or I spent a lot of money and time getting a degree, I should be using that, I have to be in charge to be using it. And it really does boil down to that idea of it's all just being human.
And if you think about it, it's a trickle-down effect, right? Well, not you, but in general, the caregiver feels dehumanized by the client, right? They feel like it's very transactional. You just want me to do this or do that. And you don't think of me as a person. And then the caregiver goes on to dehumanize the child that they're caring for while they're getting the transactional job. So the whole thing, and the parents will feel dehumanized because they think that teacher doesn't listen to me, that teacher doesn't care about me, whatever. So it's just.
So that, like, when I think of cookie cutter curriculum, when you say that, right? When teachers are just, here's the thing you're doing on Monday. And it'll be great because everybody at all the other centers we have will be doing the same thing on Monday. It's like, you don't know who I am, what mood I'm in that day, and you don't know any of my kids. How would that be the thing? But if I'm treated that way, then I'm going to treat the kids like, sorry, we're doing leaves today. I know it's still summer for us, it's on September 20th.
Falling at all.
So it's just, I mean, dehumanizing is, I think, the word. I love, though, the word justice in there too. Because kind of what you were just saying, if people are treated justly, if teachers and caregivers are treated justly, they're more likely to treat the children justly. And if we want them to go out into the world and work towards a more just place, it starts with how they're treated.
I can think back to my earliest memories, and I do this all the time. I always lead with the little girl in me and think about the times when somebody saw me or heard me, or at least appeared to value what I was saying. And I was into whatever they were giving me.
Right.
And just the way that it works. If I value you, I hear you, I see you, I'm into what you're doing. This is just a part of being just and having a just society and a just educational experience. So very, very difficult and very hard.
Sorry, Heather, I'm not letting you talk now.
Go ahead.
So now I'm thinking about just the way social justice works or doesn't work is when people, the sort of white savior thing, a nonprofit comes in, here's what this community needs, and we're going to save you, versus listening, partnering, and that same thing happening at that level. And obviously I watched one of Goldie Mohamed's talks, because this is not coming just from me, but it, like, I can see it in this nonprofit level or whatever, just in the way things are done. That same attitude when you're seen, what are the great things about whatever the neighborhood you're in, or the neighborhood you're trying to help, or whatever. Not, oh, here's the things that are wrong, the deficit view, and then I know how to fix it.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know if we're going to have like a point that we need to keep getting to, but we keep popping off of each other, and I keep thinking of something. And
however the conversation goes is what the
Okay.
podcast is.
So that makes me think about microaggressions, right? I live in a predominantly white community. And so a lot of, excuse me, my clientele is white. And several of the well-meaning clients I've had in my 14 years in the past will come in and be like, oh, we're behind you because, you know, you're a Black woman business owner and you're a Black educator. And those will be the same people that'll be like, you didn't do it the way I wanted to do it. This makes me feel uncomfortable, or blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah, you are meaning to humanize me, but not really, because you have these systems in your head that you haven't broken down yet. And it makes it hard. It's exhausting, just like it's exhausting for children to be when people are constantly dehumanizing them. So that makes me, that helps lead my practice. Don't do that.
Don't do it. All right. So yeah, I'm gonna jump around too, because hold on, I have to find the quote again. It disappeared on me. There we go. I wanted to talk about love, I guess, is the other element of this. And Carol Garbodin Murray, who's been on the show lots and lots, and wrote that great Illuminating Care book that honestly, Carol, if you're listening, you're part of the reason I struggle to write my book, because I'm constantly like, this is going to be nothing as powerful as Carol's book was. Anyway, also, we love you, Carol. But anyway, she has written and talked a little bit about love, and Jules Page is out there talking about love in education and early childhood. And it's something that makes us, like the other, like talking about dehumanizing and talking about the other things that we've touched on, makes people uncomfortable, like unreasonably uncomfortable, right? And why do you think it makes us uncomfortable?
I think it's easier to get things done if you're doing it in a very transactional way. And if you're doing it transactionally, then there's no heart involved in it, right? I grew up with a lot of trauma. So in order for me to survive, I had to do things in a transactional way. Couldn't feel, couldn't think. I'm just going to get through. When my life started to change is when I stopped and started feeling. You all swear on here, right?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Some more than others.
That's when my life really took off. When I started acknowledging when things hurt me, when things brought me joy, when things made me feel peaceful. That was when my life really changed. When I started listening to the children that I care for and hearing if I made a rupture that needed to be repaired, that's when things started changing. And I think when we bring that to other people's attention and they're living their lives transactionally to whatever degree, it makes you uncomfortable, because then you have to stop and actually give it some thought.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that so many people, because I used to be a child care center director, so I've done a lot of interviews, and the interview is always very much like, oh, I just love children and I want to be there for them and I want to make a difference for them. And then in practice, it turns into this, suddenly I flip into my transactional script, and sort of like, sometimes I think it's an adult protecting themselves. Instead of
from other adults, though.
From other adults, yes, like accusations, or even just comments about favoritism and judgment, and you're not a professional. But we have to bring it back to what for the the children. How could bringing more love into this impact the children who are with us? And then it does benefit us, right? Because the way we shift things, Mike's got his finger up, he's ready to
I do.
Go.
Okay. And I think that's where Muhammad's the way she uses the word genius fits in.
Okay.
Right? Because when you love children, you're finding their genius, their individual genius, their uniqueness. It's so funny because I feel like, that now this quote is all like why those four things all have to go together. Because it's that idea, like it can feel like favoritism if you're not making sure that you find the genius in every child. And some children may be harder for you, and that I can't remember the word like Lisa Murphy uses for that, right? But you have to find that thing in that in every single child. Some, if they're more like you, whether that means culturally or just experience or interest,
right? Yeah,
yeah, it's easier. But for the kid you don't, you got to find it because.
And to me, oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's
what you got to do. You got to jump in. With me and Mike.
This is a part of the game, though. The ones that it's harder to pull out the genius in them, that's where I'm going to grow. So I'm going to gravitate to the one that there's the most push and pull so that I can find the genius in them so we can have something that we link up on. Because if you don't, it's going to be transactional until they're out of there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's when I can sense burnout because I coach teachers in a center, and the teachers who can't find it, it's like, they're showing me that they're burned out. They're not finding the genius in themselves.
That's good.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, let's talk about what we mean by genius now that we're at the now that we've already been talking about it for a while. But so for anyone whose mind maybe went to academics, discrete academic skill or focused solely on cognitive, their existence from the neck up or whatever. What are we talking about when in this conversation when we're talking about genius?
When I'm talking about genius, I mean, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh,
Go ahead.
When I'm talking about genius, I mean like your individuality, your creativity, what you bring to the table that no one else gave you, and things that bring awe and inspire others that you brought. So it's nothing that I can give you. It's nothing you can read in a book. It's nothing from a box curriculum. You woke up like that and you brought it to us.
And I think it's different than multiple intelligences. Like that might help you if you
need a framework to start with. Yeah.
But like my understanding or thought around that is that thing of it's not just, I'm good at moving around. It's like I can play, like there's a kid right now that just can tell you everything about Bigfoot. Nice. We can play Bigfoot, like everything's around Bigfoot. So it's partly interest, but then he has this, he's bringing in folklore. He's bringing in how to include people socially to play these games. How, so it's not just an interest. It's also all the things that he brings to the classroom that, maybe started with an interest, but it's more than that. But the unique quality where you're like, if I had to describe this child in one sentence right now, he might be different in a year. But
right now, it's your creative fingerprint, right? It's different than everyone else's.
Yeah.
So that's what I see as genius.
So how do we how do we get there for a child that it's hard to connect with? Because I think back to when I was doing those interviews and people would say, I just really love children. And I'd say, what about the child who bites everybody? Or what about the child who's constantly got boogers hanging out of their nose or something, and just and just to see how they go with it in that moment. But I mean, we all have children that it's harder to see that genius in for whatever reason. So how do we get there?
So I'm a teacher's kid. My mom taught for 25 years. And I remember one day I was about 10 years old and she just mentioned to another teacher, like, you should treat every child like they have an IEP. And then basically you can see the genius in every child. And for whatever reason, it stayed on my heart and mind. And that's the way that I went into childcare, is that I'm just looking for whatever that one child possesses that makes me light up. It could be their sense of humor. You can drive me up the wall. But if you're funny, that's something that's sticking with me, right? You did something funny, you said something funny. And
that's why we keep bringing Mike back on the show.
You could be really sensitive and like to cuddle, you know, and be highly sensitive, you know, and you can erupt a lot, but that's something that will move me. Whatever little thing I can hold on to, it comes down to whatever I wake up thinking about that child or go to bed thinking about that child thing. That's it that I try to hold on to.
Okay.
I love that you said what makes you light up, because I had already written down the phrase lights up. I was thinking of the child though, like if you can't see it, what's making that child light up? You know? And even if it is something where they went and pushed a kid and the kid yelled at them and they seem to be engaged. Yeah. It's like, okay, so there's the connection part. Maybe they don't know how else to get a reaction except that right now. Right. And maybe it's because of trauma, maybe it's whatever, maybe they just don't have other tools, but at least, you know, they really want to connect with people. That's the thing I know. But yeah, like what's making them light up? And I also like that you said, you know, what makes you as the teacher or caregiver light up. But yeah, it was the first thing that came to my mind too. Yeah. And I love the IEP quote, because I almost feel like that's what my book Inclusion Includes Us is basically saying, except that I never use the word IEP. Right. Because I want the opposite, right? That like if we treat every kid like that, then we don't, you know, we rarely need it. Yeah. I'll have to credit your mom in the next edition.
In the next issue or the next edition. Yeah. Oh, now I just forgot what I was going to say next.
It's a lot of good thoughts going around.
I know. That's why I love doing this so much. So this wasn't in the actual quote, but Mike brought it up when we were just talking before recording, and the idea of talking about joy in connection with these other kinds of characteristics or experiences we want to have for children. I think it fits. Maybe it came from the video you were watching, Mike, and
the book it's from is Unearthing Joy. So that
duh. Yeah.
So so it really does come up.
Anyway, let's talk about joy a little bit.
Let's talk about it. I love it. Yeah. That's how I was introduced to this book, actually. Okay. I was doing a workshop on joy, and you talking about joy and how it helps, you know, with brain development and your wellness and everything, what constitutes joy. And one of my clients came in and was like, hey, I have a colleague who wrote a book called Unearthing Joy. Oh. And I was like, okay, give it a read. And then I was like, I am obsessed with this book.
Yeah. Yeah, this week has been one long week of buying books based on people I've recorded with.
Yes. You have taken all my money. Every time I'll talk about a book, I'm like, let me get it.
All right, nice. So I think joy is it's kind of like love in that people are like, I don't know that we say it out loud, that it's explicit that we say we don't need to worry about joy, but the way we go through our days, we're not valuing it or prioritizing it or wondering where it is. A lot of times we're just, you know, we think about, I think there's a difference between fun and joy, you know, and we think even play people are like, well, there's fun happening, but I think joy is a different,
And everybody, you know, we all are born, we live and we die. Everybody, unfortunately, does not feel love, and everybody does not feel joy. Everybody is not safe enough to feel joy. So yeah, it's one of those things that you can have fun, you can go on field trips, you can have parties, but everybody in that room is not feeling joy when you do it.
Yeah, I think we tend to sometimes look at like I think about myself and my previous practice and about teachers I've worked with who say, but it's just fun to do those kinds of things. And what they're talking about is it's fun for me and it's fun for, you know, the children that I have in my mind right now. And we look at the ones who are into it with us and we say, oh, then it must be, you know, an appropriate, okay, whatever thing to do. But we don't look at the children who are not having joy and thinking, that's the one I need to focus on, that I need to change something about something because that child didn't experience the joy that I saw everybody else kind of playing around with.
That part right there. So there is where you find the equity, right? If your children come in the morning And I'm super excited to see my kids. And I'm like, hey, so blah, blah, I'm so happy to see you. And because I'm happy to see them. And then there's all this extra noise pollution in the background. Everybody's talking and getting their games together. And that one child who's sensitive to noise is like, this is too much. I want to turn around and go home. But we just left that child out. So if we're changing it and making it a equitable, joyous experience, then I'm going to meet that child where they are. It doesn't have anything to do with my wants, my needs. You know, I'm going to lower my voice or maybe just wave or do something that meets them. So I find joy to be an equitable practice if you're really looking for it for everyone.
Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I mean, I was going to say, because I don't think you've read my book yet, but it's like, yeah, that.
Oh, well, we're linking there.
See chapter 2 or whatever. Yeah. But I don't use the word joy in that. But I'm also remembering, Heather, when we had the conversation with, I forgot his name, from the people from Anji Play.
Jesse Joy and Christina.
Jesse, yeah, and Christina. But joy is one of the 5, qualities they talk about. And I think in the same way, maybe slightly different, but because I love the equity part of that. I don't think that came up in the Anji Play conversation. Not that they wouldn't say that, but but it is more that idea. I find that it's easy to think about, well, if 80% of the kids are doing it, it's easy to say, oh yeah, everyone loved that activity. And really having to learn, did everybody? I use a lot of video as a coach because it's like, look, you really, and I try to start with, look at, you really connected with this kid and this kid. That's great. What could we do for these 2 over here that we're not into this?
Just
yeah. Well, I think it fits with your book. That's why I was like, go ahead, Mike. I know you want to say something about this because but one of the things that stood out to me immediately in your book, Mike, is you said something like inclusion is something we do, but belonging is something the child feels. And I think that kind of fits here too. Like we could say, well, I'm inclusive, but if that one child is over there struggling to come into the noisy room, we haven't really, just saying you can come in the room isn't the same,
yeah. Well, I love that. Belonging is huge too. I think belonging is kind of runs tandem with joy. All those things kind of link together.
Right. That's true. Yeah. You don't feel a sense of joy if you don't feel you belong. Yeah.
So I've been thinking and reading a lot about mental health in early childhood for a couple of different reasons. But so I just did a porch play chat with Deb about play and mental health, and Dr. Erica Bachnick was on an episode recently, and that's kind of her thing. But I think everything that we've talked about so far ties into it, that like mental health has become kind of a trend. Like I'm not saying that we're not genuinely concerned about that with young children in the programs and settings we're working with them in. But it tends to be, I think, transactional. Like if we do these things, behavior will get better, and that's mental health in our mind, But all of these things we're talking about tie into that. Just we really want children to have a space and an experience and relationships that truly give them a sense of belonging and well-being and safety.
I feel like we need to start using the same phrase we've done with medical health, right? That it's mental health and wellness.
Yeah.
Right. Because too often we only use the term when we mean someone who has a deficit.
Yes,
when of course all of us have mental health.
Yeah.
But
every single one of us. Yep.
Yeah. I was trying to remember what Dr. Butnick said on the episode. It was something around, I think, belonging even, right? That's what mental health is.
Belongingness. That's her
belongingness.
Word.
Yes.
She likes to talk about
is mental health or whatever. Yeah.
It's so important that we choose our words wisely, because I think about what you were just saying about mental health and buzzwords and trending. So a million child care provider will say, this is, we're a social emotional practice, but what do you mean? Do you mean that you have like flashcards with faces, emotional faces on your wall? Or
you're going to get Mike going again.
The well-being of a child.
Yeah.
So words like well-being, words like mental wellness, words like belonging, those dig deeper than just the transactional, happy face, sad face type of thing.
Yeah.
And it's so important. It's what actually changed the course of my business because of the pandemic. And we were shut down and I was open. And because most of my parents were, my grown-ups were first responders. They all worked in the medical field. And so I closed for 2 days and 2 days only. And when I say I have never seen children in this amount of despair, the entire time I had worked, it was like you could feel the tension, full on fights, full on meltdowns. And I was like, something has to change. And so I'm like, there's nowhere for us to go, nothing for us to do. I'm like, I'm just going to throw it back. We're going to go outside in the backyard.
What
figure it out.
Yeah.
What I find so interesting about that, and I love that you had that transformation, but I wrote an article called Lessons from the Pandemic a few years ago with why can't I think of her name? Deb from IPA USA.
Deb
Lawrence.
Yeah.
But because our thought was what we really learned, because we knew that it was going to come to, we have to catch up on academics. But what we actually learned is if it truly was about academics, being kids schooling from home should be better because we've taken away the social element. And of course, what we learned is nope, without social emotional learning and experience, positive experiences, no other learning happens. And that should be the lesson we take from it. And I love that that is the lesson you got. I'm curious if you don't, well, I was going to say, don't mind me asking, but I guess that's the whole point is you're here to get asked questions.
You're committed now because I don't edit.
Yeah, I hope you, sure. But just the way through this whole conversation, that idea of joy and love and justice and I'm forgetting all of humanity, like all these things interlock. And I think that's what's hardest for people when they try to transition, because if you keep an academic mindset, but you try, I'm going to make sure I like connect with each child sometime during the day, it doesn't work, And so I'm curious for you, what was that like? Like, how did you fit all the pieces together? Or was it just being outside and stepping back and then figuring it out? I don't know. I'm curious. What was the process like for you?
It was very messy. So when we went outside and I realized the children, of course, they became more regulated and they started to surpass getting to what was our normal and started to appear to be these beings I had never known before. And I had taken care of these kids for many, many years. And so they started to tell me things they had never told me. They started to behave in ways I had never seen them behave. And I was like, they're showing me who they are. This is not their best. They're showing me their genius. They're not showing me their school behavior. They're not showing me my expectation of them. They are showing me who they are. And so I'm like, I'm going to keep on going. The more that I kept on going, the more I'm like, you got to get rid of all the shit you did before. Like, all has to go. So
nice.
So the way that it got messy is when I was deconstructing that, the parents were like, what is happening? So they trusted me enough. I'm going to say they trusted me enough. Hopefully it wasn't just transactional and they needed somewhere for their kids to go, but they trusted
it could
me
be
enough.
A little of both.
Yeah. Involuntary trust.
Could be true.
So they went along on the journey, but it was totally different than what they were used to. And we're still, this is almost 4 years later, 3.5 years later, that we're still changing, because the more that we do it, the more that I realize, no, you have to double down on this. You have to lead with the children. This doesn't, like, you want to accept and listen to the parents and understand their frustration or their confusion. But at the end, it starts with the child.
Mm-hmm.
And once I did that, I just wanted to continue doing it. I wanted to learn how to shut up. I want to learn how to step back. You know, I don't have to create everything. I don't have to sit down. I love lists, love what are they, lesson plan books and all that. I love organizing.
Yes.
But that's all me.
Yeah.
That's and if I'm doing that, then guess what? I can't check in with that child. I can't, you know, have a impromptu moment because I have shit to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to get rid of all of that in order to make a space that I can confidently say, I know every child in here, because I didn't take the time to work. I know me. I didn't take the time to put myself in there. I was just trying to learn the children.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
As you were saying that, I was watching a video on, because we just became Facebook friends, like, you know, a few hours ago. But this video of kids on the porch, they're making some sort of white goo. I didn't have the volume on at all.
Yeah. The shaving cream.
It's shaving cream. Okay. Yeah. But there are some kids who are covered head to toe in it. And of course, there's other kids that just on their hand or, you know, but it's like they each get to do it. But then you see that, I mean, the only word you can use is joy, right? Of like, they are being them. They are truly themselves. They are just sparked in this way that they're exploring in all these different ways.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just, as you were talking, it was great to sort of see like, oh yeah, you wouldn't have seen that 5 years ago, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely not. And I get the most pushback on that. That is the biggest thing. You know, I've had parents bring it to me that, you know, it was embarrassing if their child went home with marker or, you know, whatever, you know, that's the most pushback, is like, look, that's where they found the most joy.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That to me speaks volumes, that we have such, I would say, is bondage. We are bound by judgments of others, what other adults think and what they say. It has nothing. We threw that baby out with the bathwater. We don't even care about their joy. Like,
right.
Oh, but my neighbor was looking at me when I walked in the house. So that really shows what we have to.
The neighbor was probably going to be looking at him anyway.
Maybe the neighbor was jealous. Like, man, where do I get some of that?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, what smells like shaving cream?
Smells like
the whole block smells like shaving cream.
Yeah.
I saw that picture and I could immediately smell it.
Yeah.
So fun. But I mean, I just, whenever I see like shaving cream, for some reason, maybe this is you know, sort of representative of a bigger thing, but that's one thing that if I see a child with shaving cream, I immediately feel joy for the child. Like, you know, how must that feel, even if they're not consciously thinking, oh, Kisa really trusts me and whatever. But just imagine that experience, the lived experience of being trusted to do something that feels a little transgressional, maybe, like I get to just rub this all over my legs. Are you serious? And that, so for what, you know, one thing we know is that when children feel that kind of joy, or one thing that, you know, the brain research is kind of pointing at, is that increases that brain development, those neural connections, that myelination that's happening, is when children are feeling that kind of joy, it connects more deeply for them, whatever they're doing in the sensory input of it all.
BDNF is being produced.
I just think,
I can't remember what it stands for, but
if we want to really talk about learning or whatever, that's such a that could be such a more powerful experience than the group time activity that we
and you can't test myelination, right? But it's like, but we know, I mean, that's the problem, the with sort of brain research. It's like brain research actually tells us that human connection,
yes, I was going to say that the social connection of doing that with someone else, and
that spark joy increases myelination, increases or strengthens neural pathways. We know all that.
We know
what it won't do is we aren't going to test people. We can't test people on that. So what we can test people is that, do you know what letter this is? And it doesn't matter what age we're doing that. We can it's either a yes or a no. And so, and it's that whole thing of, anytime we talk about assessment, it's like, what are we, like, we can decide. I think we had a conversation a long time ago where I just said we could create a curriculum like where we're just going to learn the infield for Chicago Cubs. Right. And all the kids could learn it. We could test them on it. We could say it's evidence-based. But it's like, but what does that have to do with anything with these people being human, with these people growing into the genius that they each have? Nothing. But we could say it's evidence-based. But it's more the question of, is that even worth it?
Right. Should we even be doing it?
And anyone who can't watch that video of kids playing in shaving cream and not know that's worth doing is just shouldn't be in the field. Or shouldn't be funding the field either, because legislators too should be able to look at that and say, yes, that's what we need to give money for. That's why we need to invest in early childhood, because we need every child to have that joy and to find their genius.
And
sorry, I'm rambling.
So that's what we're here for.
No.
Oh, right. That's right. Podcast.
It's a podcast, Mike.
So we can't value what we can't name, right? We don't value what we can't name. And if we don't understand how joy connects to learning, and all we see is test in spelling and reading and all this rote learning, right? They have nothing to go by, right? The parents think in the real world, they don't need to be happy. They have to know something.
Right.
But where they're learning this, the shaving cream, the multisensory experiences, the joy, the belonging, the well-being, the relationships, that's where all the learning is going. So if the spelling test and the math assignments are void of relationships, learning, multisensory experiences, and have no meaning to the child, they're not learning. They're memorizing the shit you want them to know and regurgitating it for you. So
I think so much of the resistance comes from, I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but that teacher identity that, well, then what do I do with all my knowledge if children are just playing, quote unquote, or if I'm following the child, what do I do with my expertise? How am I a teacher? And it's what you just described. It's understanding all of that stuff that's happening during the shaving cream play. You're still a professional with expertise and specific knowledge. It just looks different than our cultural idea of learning. That's where we come in.
And that's where the equity is again. It doesn't have to look like this Puritan example of
the Puritans. God,
it all goes back to
I really fucked it up. Anyway. Sorry, Kisa.
So if you have this example in your mind of the way it should be, you can never do it the way that it's supposed to be done. There's certain things that are just innate, right? Nature is going to create learning experiences for children. Relationships is going to create learning for children. Belonging. These things are just natural. Just sit back. You are the expert, like take it in and then share that information with the people who do not know.
Right.
So that it spreads.
Right. Instead of saying, I wish I could do it that way, but the parents want, or my director wants, or the curriculum wants, we could say to those people who are wanting, here's why I'm doing it the way I'm doing it, instead of We make choices about that a lot.
One way to help parents understand is schema. So see Heather's book in whatever 14 months. I don't know.
Yep. I think I made a late January promise.
Yeah, I think I sent you a photo of one of our teachers, doing that, of just having. I think she just focused on transforming, was it? And there was shaving cream. There was these different things, and she just had these things about what is happening with kids, but the joy on their faces in the photos, and then the description for the parents who needed the, like, why is that important? Why do I look at this and think, oh man, my kid is a genius? And not like, well, wait, what about letters and numbers? I mean, it's not the only way. You don't have to, but I thought I'd plug as your publicist, I had to refer to it.
So then that goes back to the magic of teachers. What are we going to do if we take all that away? If we understand the importance of schema, if we understand the importance of all these different forms of play, then we can explain it to people who don't know the value in it. If I know what a child gains from dumping, then when that parent flips their lid over the kid, or the teacher flips their lid over the kid that constantly dumps, then I can say, well, they're actually learning all of these things when they do it. Uh-oh, you all are frozen.
Hold on.
Oh, there you go.
There, you're back. Okay. God, that was close one. Thought I was going to have to edit. Okay, go ahead.
Not that.
Sorry, Kisa.
That's all right. Then we can educate others. We don't have to pour into children constantly. They can give us something back. I always say that our work is healing work, right? Because the more that we learn from them, or the more we heal them, the more that we heal ourselves. And then we can heal their families, and we can share the healing with everybody. And it's a community thing that we're doing, and we can grow. But if we're just keeping it to ourselves because we want to be the gatekeepers and say we're responsible for, the intelligence of all these other people, then they're really not learning anything. They're just learning how to be a carbon copy of you.
Yeah. Or how to jump through your hoops.
That's right.
Until you're not around anymore.
And honestly, I think if we're talking about teachers at this point, right? Because it feels like we're winding down here. Going back to what you said at the beginning about when you interview people, everyone talks about their love of children. So connecting that, right? That if you love children and really want what's best for them, then here's the way to do that. Just regurgitating, worksheets about letters and coloring an apple so they understand if you truly love them, you want to spark joy. You want to get them to have relationships with their peers, with the adults in their life, and a love of learning, of discovery, maybe is a better word to use there. Because then we don't have to argue, because it's not discovery to get a worksheet of an apple to color in. And then be told don't use purple.
Exactly. Right.
But having discovery, and now you get to love children, and here's the thing you can do to make love an active verb and not a platitude or whatever.
Yep. It is time to kind of wrap up. So is there anything, Kisa, that we haven't gotten to that you really wanted to talk about?
The only thing that's been on my mind and heart lately is just another buzzword that goes around is, being renegade. And I don't think there's anything that's renegade about loving a child, seeing
Shouldn't
a child,
be, right? Yeah.
a child, and valuing a child. These are things that we should be doing every day. We should be humanizing children, and we, as the healers and the educators, should double down on doing what the child needs. And that might mean pissing off some administration, might mean confusing parents, but because we are experts, we have to figure out how to articulate what we're doing, why we're doing it, and who it serves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I keep telling people, and someday maybe someone is listening to this, years in the future and it's not relevant anymore, but I keep telling people this is an excellent time to do those kinds of things because nobody's getting fired right now in early childhood. Like there's such a staffing shortage that this is the time.
Now is the time.
This is the time to just do the things that we think are that we know are in pursuit of children's well-being and our own well-being.
The pandemic gifted us with that.
Yeah.
We can let go of everything that didn't serve us and leave it back there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now I hope no one goes out and gets fired because of this podcast, but
Heather will hire you.
I'll hire you. I've got a center coming. I'm looking for staff in about a year.
Yeah.
Lafayette, here we come.
Yeah.
Or West Lafayette, I forgot.
Well, the center will be in Lafayette. It's
okay.
We're just across the river. 2 great cities.
Can I show Goldie's book? So just
sure,
Oh yeah.
Thank you. There is. Oh, hold on. Hold it still. There we go. Unearthing Joy. Got it. Yep. Thank you. Got to get to Amazon now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kisa, for coming on. This was a fun conversation. And I look forward to talking with you again in the not too distant.
Yeah, it was really great meeting you. And
I enjoyed it.
And thanks, Mike, for coming on. I guess I'll thank you too. Whatever. All right. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
You were totally obsession worthy.
Oh, obsession worthy. All right. Richard's got competition. All right. Okay. All right. Anyway, this has been an episode of That Early Childhood Nerd. Thank you for listening. I hope you come back again next week.